Welcome back to the Crash Course Podcast. My name is Craig Crash Collins, joined as always by Brandon Scott, otherwise known as B. Scott. It's draft week for the NFL. There's still a lot of uncertainty surrounding what will happen at the top of the board, and today we're going to discuss which players will have an immediate impact on whichever team chooses them, what to watch for as far as first-round sleepers, and what's to be expected in the top 10 on Thursday. It's a very exciting time. We talked about the Colts last week in the draft. We got you all set there. Now we talk about the whole scope of the NFL because, you know, as we talked about last week, it's an exciting time of the year. Maybe B. Scott's favorite time of the year, aside from maybe a couple of other, a couple other times. But, you know, it's a lot of fun, exciting things happening. And we got started hot this week with the trade finally coming down for Aaron Rodgers. We thought it was going to happen. We knew it was going to happen. It was just a matter of when. You started to kind of wonder, like, what happens if it's like doesn't happen before it would have had to have happened before the draft, but at the same time, like, there was no guarantees because, like, once Aaron Rodgers, went out and said, "Hey, I want to play for the Jets," it was kind of like there was no. It's kind of like when Paul George said he only wanted to play in LA, which, I mean, obviously he wanted to play for the Lakers. He ends up going to the Clippers, but it's kind of that same scenario where it's like, okay, now it just, you kind of have to take whatever we give you is what the, Packers and
that's honestly how it ended up being.
right.
I
Yeah.
don't feel like the Jets gave up a king's ransom for him whatsoever.
Not at
I was
all.
kind of shocked. I was like, that's all it took
Right.
to get Aaron Rodgers?
Right.
Okay.
And him calling a shot didn't help matters either as far as
No.
the Packers getting a big sum back for him. And I mean, also, 38-year-old quarterback. He's not been really, yes, just 2 years ago they were in the divisional round. They were in the NFC Championship in 2020, but at the same time, it's not like, I don't know. The Packers the last few years haven't really set the world on fire. So we'll see what happens with them. But in case you missed it, this is what it took. The Jets receive Aaron Rodgers, the 15th pick this year and the 170th pick this year. The Packers receive pick 13, pick 42, pick 207, and a 2024 second-round pick, which becomes a first if Rodgers plays 65% of the snaps, which I don't think there will be a problem there. So, I mean, if he does what he's done the last several years, he's gonna play. That's gonna end up being a first rounder for the Jets or for the Packers, excuse me, in 2024. So just a very interesting thing. I do like the thing that I've heard, kind of the rumors and the grumblings going on about how there is a good chance that the Packers finally take a first round wide receiver. I think that would be hysterical. Just because they need one, they've got, and they can go get one now, and also just the fact that just kind of sticking it to Rodgers on the way out, how you always complained about not having any talent. Well, we're gonna go get Jackson Smith and Jigba, or we're gonna go out and get Jordan Addison or somebody like that. So I really like that idea. Heck, theoretically, with the 13th and 42nd pick, they could go get Darnell Washington too out of Georgia. I would love it if they got two weapons for Jordan Love. Because the thing for me too is that I never was really sold on Jordan Love coming out of Nevada. It wasn't really
Mm-mm.
it wasn't really a oh, this is the quarterback of the future. It was kind of okay, they took a backup quarterback in the first round in whatever year that was, 5-6 years ago. Or at least it feels like that. I'm sure there'll be somebody in the comments saying what year it was exactly, and it was sooner than that, but it feels like it was 5-6 years ago at least. And because I remember when Aaron Rodgers fell to the Packers in 2008, it was the big report that he was falling in the draft and all that kind of thing, as opposed to it was kind of a shock that Jordan Love was picked, in the first round. So I don't know that Jordan Love is unequivocally the answer for Green Bay, so we'll see how that turns out. I do think it's funny that Aaron Rodgers is falling pretty much exactly into the footsteps of Brett Favre, so I guess the Vikings have a decision to make next year on whether or not they want to kick Kirk Cousins the curve and bring in Aaron Rodgers as a Viking, if he really wants to complete the Favre Odyssey, but I still don't think the Jets will be an interesting team next year. I don't know if they're necessarily better than the Bills. I think them and the Dolphins will be vying for that second spot in the AFC East. But it definitely is interesting. The saga is over. We'll see how Rodgers does with the Jets next year.
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you, I was excited to see this finally go through, and I think the Jets have an offense that's it's going to be pretty good. Um, so it'll be interesting to see if Aaron Rodgers still does have it. But yeah, and what's kind of funny is it landed on like an anniversary of Brett Favre being traded to the Jets by the Packers.
Yeah.
I can't remember what exact anniversary it was, but I saw that. I was like, oh, that's interesting. I wonder if they were just waiting for that. No, obviously not. But yeah, it's kind of funny when you look at some of these like at trades throughout the years and everything. Certain teams like to work with other teams, work with certain teams, and it always seems like the Colts are making trades with Philadelphia, or it's like, oh, the
For a while, it
Packers
was
like
the
to trade their
Browns too. Yeah.
yeah, and then it's like, oh, the Packers like to trade their old quarterbacks to the Jets. So yeah, that's kind of fun. But yeah, I was very glad to see this go through. Um, it's kind of funny. You mentioned that, hey, maybe the Packers will actually draft a wide receiver in the first round as kind of a ha-ha on Aaron Rodgers' way out. But NFL.com actually has the Packers taking Paris Johnson,
Oh my
not a
gosh.
wide receiver.
Well, yeah, I mean, they got to dangle that out in front of us, but yeah, inevitably they for whatever reason um
No,
can never take a wide receiver in that first round. It's just I don't even know. You thought last year was the year. We were talking
oh
about it
yeah,
last year on this very podcast, on this very episode last year. We were talking about how we think it could potentially happen, but nope, it still has not happened. Um,
no.
but yeah, one final
I mean,
thing.
they got one early in the second last year, and he actually ended up being pretty good.
Yeah. The final thing I want to bring up on the Rodgers Packers trade is one of the things I have enjoyed watching. There was a TikTok that was the sound of it's Avengers Endgame when Scarlet Witch is like, "You took everything from me," and Thanos is like, "I don't even know who you are." And it was Zach Wilson as Scarlet Witch and Aaron Rodgers as Thanos. So I always thought that was pretty funny. But yeah, I will be interested to see how the AFC East shakes out, as well as the NFC North, because I think there's some people that might jump on the Packers hype train to see if they can maybe get back to the top there. I still think, might pick the Vikings and the Lions in front of them next year. We'll see. And then, also, like I said, I don't know that the Jets will be better than the Bills. But I think they're definitely a playoff team, so we'll kind of see what happens from there. But what we came here to talk about is the NFL draft, and it all gets going on Thursday with the first round, the 27th of April, then rounds 2 and 3 Friday, April 28th, and then finally the final 3 rounds 4 through 7 on Saturday. The Texans, Lions, Eagles, and Seahawks all have 2 first-round picks, so we'll see if there's any sort of trades that happen, because those teams obviously you want all the draft capital you can, and you want to bring in all the young talent you can, but at the same time, you could potentially get more capital and still not lose a first-round pick, so we'll watch out for those teams as potential trade candidates. Also, the Texans have 12 picks total, the most for any team. The Dolphins have 4 picks total, the fewest for any team. I'm pretty sure they had the fewest last year, too, so the Dolphins don't really if you're looking for a team that
Isn't that from like a bunch of the trades that they've made to bring in high-caliber players?
Yeah, which it was to bring the main reason I think is Tyreek Hill, but it's wild because they're the team that San Francisco traded with to trade up for Trey Lance. So you would have thought that would have kind of like offset the capital they would have had to give up for Hill a little bit, but apparently not. The Dolphins say, heck with draft capital. Them and the Rams, they just like, we don't need the draft. That's fine. We don't need to worry about that at all. But looking at the draft, we talked about the uncertainty a little bit in the open, the intro to the podcast. One thing that is pretty much for certain is that the Panthers will take quarterback Bryce Young with the first overall pick, which I think is the right decision there. And so the first kind of question and talking point I want to get into today is, what is the ceiling for the Panthers this season if they select Bryce Young? And I was thinking about it. I was like, there's no reason to think they can't make the postseason. The Bucks won the division last season at 8-9. Everyone else finished 7-10. The Panthers did finish 4-2 last season with the likes of Sam Darnold as signal caller. The last time Frank Reich had a quarterback of this magnitude, he made the postseason. I mean, sure. I mean, I know Philip Rivers, very established guy already, and so some people may, shudder at the idea of already saying Bryce Young and seeing that comparison there. But I mean, at the same time, I mean, you're saying 41-year-old Philip Rivers is, far and away a better talent at the time than than Bryce Young, and he still, was able to make the postseason. And even if you want to, exclude the whole Philip Rivers effect, before that, obviously he had Andrew Luck. So the last time he had a I don't want to say like anything like a sure thing or anything like that, because I think Bryce Young does have some developing to do. But the last time that Frank Reich had a talent this good, it was, he made the postseason. I still think he's a good coach. It got to be kind of a bad situation in Indy. And then you look at the other quarterbacks that are in the NFC South. You've got Baker Mayfield in Tampa, you've got Desmond Ridder in Atlanta, and you've got Derek Carr in New Orleans. Now, the Saints with Derek Carr are probably the favorites to win the division. I think Baker Mayfield could be solid in Tampa Bay. I would be picking Tampa Bay to win the NFC South if they still had Bruce Arians compared with Baker Mayfield, because I think that would really get the most out of Baker Mayfield. We'll see what happens otherwise. But I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility to think that the Panthers could win the division with Bryce Young at the helm. They did bring in Adam Thielen. They brought in DJ Chark, Miles Sanders. Those are among the playmakers that'll be in Charlotte for the Panthers in 2023. So I don't think it's out of the possibility they could win the division, or at the bare minimum make the postseason.
Yeah, I mean, I agree, especially because that division isn't the strongest historically speaking. I mean, it could surprise us, but here as of late, it is one of those divisions that's just constantly seems down. But I think this is definitely a good step in the right direction for the Panthers. For them to make that trade, it kind of shows you and it shows their fan base that says, hey, look, we're ready to compete again. We're going to make the moves necessary to make sure that we have the right pieces in play here. So I think taking Bryce Young, yes, I think it's the safest pick, but at the same time, there are question marks. Obviously, his size is one of those big question marks, which honestly, if you look at the rest of the NFL and quarterbacks in the NFL now, I don't know why people are still questioning a quarterback's height. We've seen that smaller quarterbacks are still able to win and win at a high level. So I think the people that are questioning it are obviously the people that love the intangibles that I complain about on here all the time. Or the measurables. That's what it is. The measurables. It's the measurables, not the intangibles. The intangibles are a good thing. But yeah, there's no reason to believe that Carolina cannot make a run for the postseason. Do I think they're going to win the division? I don't think they can have what it takes to win the division, looking at what New Orleans still has. But I mean, it's a weak division, nonetheless. You can go in, you can pad your record with that division and make a run at the wild card spot. There's no reason to think they can't.
Yeah, I mean, especially because when you look at it, I mean, the NFC East is probably the most stacked as far as having the Giants, Eagles, Cowboys. But then in the NFC South, I mean, like I said, weak division. NFC North, I mean, definitely the Vikings have their question marks. I mean, they had an amazing season despite
the Vikings are looking for a new. Yeah, they're looking to hit the reset button.
Right, except a lot of their stats didn't make sense with their record last year, so we'll see if that kind of rears its ugly head if that stays the same. The Packers we talked about, I mean, we'll see what they have with Jordan Love at the helm, and we'll see if the Lions can duplicate what they did last year. I mean, I'm definitely in the hype.
And the Lions have lost one of their biggest offensive weapons,
Jamal Williams,
for the year. Oh no, Jameson Williams.
Oh yeah, I saw that he
was suspended for betting on NFL games. Like, come on, guys. You're not allowed to do it, and it's so much easier today for people to find out you did it because it's all done digitally. There was a handful of them. It's like, oh, come on. Did anybody not learn?
No, apparently not. So yeah, so and then in the NFC West, I mean, we'll see this. We'll see what the Rams have. We'll see what the Seahawks have. But I mean, a lot of people in the Cardinals. But I mean, there's a lot of and the 49ers obviously too. I don't know why
Oh
I
yeah.
listed them last, but but yeah, I mean, there's definitely space for the Panthers. I think that'll be interesting to see if they can get there. I think it is definitely a possibility, and I'm excited to see it because I think Bryce Young has the potential to be a really good player down in Charlotte. One thing I did enjoy, well, I mean, always enjoyed doing the NFL draft episodes, but one thing I especially enjoyed from last year is when we talked about, which players will have the most impact regardless of what team drafts that player. So who, no matter what team they go to, who is going to still stand out and be really good. Quarterback, we're not going to spend a ton of time on this. I think far and away, Bryce Young out of Alabama. We talked about him, at length for the last few minutes here. The rest, he's the surest bet of the quarterbacks in this draft. His player comps, Drew Brees. There's questions about C.J. Stroud. I don't know how big those questions are, how inflamed by rumors and lying and all that stuff. How what the gamesmanship has done, with that, and whatever. His player comp is Jared Goff for whatever it's worth. C.J. Stroud, he did have, disappointing ends the last couple of seasons in Columbus. But those are just things that could potentially be knocks. They shouldn't be that big of knocks on Stroud. But even then, after Strauss, Stroud, it drops off to Levis and Richardson. So
Yeah.
the surest bet is Bryce Young. I think no matter which team drafts him, which is going to be the Panthers, but just for the sake of the argument, the Panthers are going to be a breakout team, I think, in 2023.
Yeah, I mean, Bryce Young is easy to pick, but I am looking at CJ Stroud as a potential difference maker, depending on what team he lands on. That's the key there. If he ends up going to the Texans, eh. If it ends up with the Colts do have some pieces there that could make CJ Stroud even better. I mean, you've got a 1 and a 2 at wideout. You've got Jonathan Taylor. Um, so there's some pieces there that could really help CJ Stroud out. So I'm going with him actually because I think he kind of has all the tools that you're looking for. He's got good accuracy, he's got a strong arm, he's athletic enough to take over and run the ball if he needs to. And people are overlooking that. I say this all the time about CJ Stroud. People are overlooking his athletic ability. They go, oh, but look, one game he just completely disappeared. He tends to disappear. Like, which game are you talking about? Northwestern. That game, the wind was blowing like
Well, yeah, and
40 miles an hour, and it's Chicago, and so double that almost. The ball, nobody could throw the ball that day. I mean, that day, Aiden O'Connell at Purdue couldn't even throw the ball more than 10 yards. So the ball wasn't going anywhere. So what did he do? He just took over and decided to run. He was running the ball, and he led Ohio State to a victory that day. And so he he understands, he can read the plays. Yes, he did not score. He scored extremely low on his S2. But at the same time, tape doesn't lie to me. I know, like, okay, maybe he's just not a good test taker.
Yeah.
I'm not a good test taker. I mean, I know that's an area I'm not strong in. Um, but when you watch the tape of CJ Stroud, he just kind of has all the tools that you're looking for. So I think he has the chance to make the biggest impact on offense. But don't be surprised or as a quarterback. Yeah, as a quarterback,
Now,
biggest chance.
but the question was like regardless of team. So do you still think it's Stroud or
Oh, regardless of team.
yeah? Because that's what the exercise is. It's regardless of what team chooses them. So like even if Stroud
Yeah.
goes to
Yeah, I'm still going to go with Stroud just because of the question marks around Bryce Young's size and what, he's not exactly going to be playing behind an Alabama offensive line
that is true.
anywhere in the top 10. So is his body going to be able to hold up to a potential beating it could take this year?
Now, looking at offense in general, I was trying to figure out which way I wanted to go to. I looked at the past 10 offensive players of the year. And four of the last 10 AP Rookie of the Year honors have gone to running backs, which is the most of any position in that time. I think it's like four running backs, three wide receivers, and three quarterbacks. So I'm going to go with the running back here. I'm going with Texas running back Bijan Robinson. He's a 2022 Doak Walker Award winner. Can be a strong contributor in both the passing and running games. His player comp, according to NFL.com, is Saquon Barkley, who's the last running back to win Offensive Rookie of the Year honors. He won in 2018. He was second in rushing that year. Now, you can argue that, like, well, running back doesn't really, matter as much as it once did. Even from when Barkley came in to the NFL, the game has still changed and gone kind of away from the running back. But I think you can kind of, glass half full, reverse your thinking into being like, well, if running back isn't as valued, then he should be easier to incorporate a talent like Bijan into whatever offense you're trying to do, whatever you're trying to do offensively. And so that's kind of, what I was thinking. Like, if he truly is, an equivalent to Saquon Barkley, then I don't think there's a team out there that couldn't use and take advantage of having a Saquon Barkley, on their roster and in their backfield. I do feel like the drop off from Bijan to the second best running back in this draft is greater than the drop off between the best wide receiver to the second best wide receiver, according to NFL.com. The top four wide receiver prospects had a combine grade between 6.4 and 6.5, so everybody's really close. So I don't know that there's really a standout difference maker. Whereas at running back, Bijan grades at 6.8. Jahmyr Gibbs is evaluated at 6.4, the second best running back on their list. And honestly, I think he's projected to go in the second round, which you could see any of the top four wide receivers going in the first. So, there's only two prospects rated higher than Bijan, and that's Jalen Carter and Will Anderson. I think Bijan has a chance to be a real big difference maker. And I also looked at the last couple of wide receivers to win. You've got Jamar Chase. Far and away, was a huge talent, coming into that draft, top 5 potential pick. And then Garrett Wilson last year. The wide receiver class was a little bit closer last year, but I just didn't see this year's wide receiver class being maybe of the caliber last year's was. So that's why I didn't really go with a wide receiver here. So that's why I went with Bijan. I think he's going to be a real big difference maker. Defensively, I'm looking at Georgia defensive tackle Jalen Carter. 5 of the last 10 defensive rookie of the years have been defensive linemen. One of just 2 prospects in this draft have a combine grade over 7, according to NFL.com. The other is Will Anderson. He's got good strength, balance, athleticism. And I also, besides Carter, I do want to also highlight Joey Porter Jr., the son of Joey Porter. He's the tallest cornerback projected to go in the first round at 6'3". He's got that pedigree. I think he can also be a really big impact player. So those are the few players I'm taking a look at in the first round, especially that can really be impact players from pretty much day one.
Yeah, for sure. Bijan Robinson, I think, is he's going to surprise a lot of people. Unfortunately, because of the way people look at a running back when it comes to the draft, they don't like to take him as high. But definitely top 10 pick written all over him. For me, though, I am looking at Jackson Smith-Njigba from Ohio State. Yeah, he pretty much sat out this entire year with a foot injury, so that's going to scare some teams. And also because of it, he didn't put up the fastest 40 times at the combine. His speed isn't flying off the charts, but he has impeccable route running. He's got amazing hands. He can make catches and create space in different ways. He kind of is a lot like a David Bell, but better. So I think non-quarterback who has the best player on offense that has the best chance to make a big impression, it is Jackson Smith-Njigba. And right now, NFL.com has him slated to go at about, where was that? At 22nd overall to the Baltimore Ravens. And look, Baltimore has signed OBJ and Nelson Aguilar this offseason. So if they were to bring in somebody like Jackson Smith-Njigba, he could have the potential to be open for them because there's going to be a lot of attention placed on OBJ and Nelson Aguilar in that offense. So bringing him in, he has the potential to put up some pretty good numbers for that offense. I just kind of wanted to go a little bit different.
Yeah.
It's really tough because when you look at this season, this draft, and you know exactly where they're going to go potentially with the rookie of the year. And it seems like because of the number of quarterbacks that are being talked about right now, it's going to be a quarterback. But you know, I feel like Jackson Smith-Njigba has the opportunity if he goes to the right team in the right situation, he is going to put up big numbers.
Oh yeah, him and Jordan Addison
I think
were the two.
I think he could have a season kind of like Garrett Wilson did.
Yeah,
this past year.
He and Jordan Addison were the two wide receivers I looked at for when I was looking at that question because I was like, well, there hasn't been, even though running back has happened more often, it hasn't happened since 2018. So I was like, oh, maybe I should go wide receiver, and those were the two guys I looked at before ultimately turning around and taking Bijan still.
I mean, there's quite a few. NFL.com's got like a couple tight ends going in the first round. They have Zay Flowers, Jalen Hyatt, some other wide receivers, Michael Mayer, tight end. There's quite a few offensive players being taken after. There's a huge run on defense of what they're predicting, and then a big run on offense essentially. So it's going to be interesting. And then for me on defense, I am actually looking at Christian Gonzalez, the cornerback out of Oregon. He's really gifted when it comes to his ball skills, his athleticism, his size. He has kind of everything that it's going to take in the modern day NFL, what these teams look for in a corner. He has the opportunity, and I think he's going to surprise a lot of people. I love this prospect. I think he's got what it takes. His brother-in-law has been not a super long time, but now I guess I could say a long time NFL backup quarterback. So he knows what it takes. He has somebody within his family to tell him what it takes to be on an NFL roster and to what it takes to compete, to make sure you are still on that roster and everything. That's a good inside track for him, but just his size and his athleticism and his sense for where the ball is, I think that is going to be a game changer. I like the Jalen Carter pick, but they're obviously off the field concerns aren't going to affect how you play or how much of a difference maker you are. But some boards have him dropping because of his off the field questions. So that's going to be tough. But Christian Gonzalez, the other player I looked at as well was Devin Witherspoon, another corner out of Illinois. Look, this year, the draft is very deep with really good cornerback secondary talent. So I think that's where that position group is where you're going to see your difference maker come out of this year on defense.
Now, before we get into our mock drafts, I also wanted to talk about some first round sleepers. Just to take a look at some guys who could sneak in potentially at the end of the night on Thursday. First thought that I had was somebody that I've championed a lot for the Colts when we thought they were going to pick in the middle of the first round, or at least in the middle of the order as far as the draft is concerned, and that is Hendon Hooker. If there is a run on quarterbacks, that might happen as far as him getting selected at the end of the first round. He was the 2022 SEC Offensive Player of the Year. He broke the Vols record for completion percentage and quarterback quarterback rating for a single season. His player comp is Geno Smith, according to CBS. I know his age is a question mark, but he's definitely someone who could sneak in to the end of the first round. Another guy to look at is Hooker's teammate Jalen Hyatt, a wide receiver. You mentioned him a little bit ago, the 2022 Biletnikoff Award winner, top 5 in the FBS in receiving yards and touchdowns last season. He's got good size and speed at the position. He's ranked just outside the top 60 in terms of prospects. I know I've seen a few. I think he's kind of like a fringe first rounder. He's as far as like where he's been projected, because I've seen people take him in the first round. I've seen people not take him in the first round. When we were doing the Colts exercise last week, when the first draft I attempted to do, I tried to like make a trade and end up, because I was like, oh, here I'll try to be big brain and take, try to get Hyatt and Hooker, and it didn't work out. But I think if a team was able to do that, I think they would be in pretty cool shape. And then I've also got a couple of other SEC teammates that I want to hone in on as players ranked outside the top 50 but could sneak into the first round. And that's Georgia tight end Darnell Washington, 6'7". He would make a great target for a team. Like I said, I think it'd be really funny if the Packers took him and maybe another wide receiver in this draft. He was second team All-SEC in 2022. And then also Georgia cornerback Keely Ringo, 6'2". I didn't expect this. His player comp is Trayvon Diggs. I think that was on CBS that ranked him there. So if that's the case, I mean, any team would be lucky to sneak back into the first round and grab him. He was also second team All-SEC last year. So there are a couple of SEC players to look at as potentially going in the first round on Thursday night.
Yeah, most of those guys you mentioned are guys that I have on my sleeper list as well, but two other names to throw out there. The first one is not as much of a sleeper, but kind of like a fringe late first, early second. See him kind of climbing up some boards higher in the first round on some boards. That's wide receiver Zay Flowers out of Boston College. He's just kind of been hanging around there, and he's one of those players that somebody that is needing of a wide out could be just sitting there for the taking later in that first round. But the other one that I'm really keeping my eye on that I think definitely a second round talent, but because of his ability to play all 5 spots on the offensive line, could make him a big target, especially later in the first round. And that is North Dakota State offensive lineman. I'm just not even going to give him a position because he can play. He can play and has played all 5. North Dakota State offensive lineman Cody Mauch. Cody Mauch is most well known for just kind of being outrageous. I don't really know outrageous is the right phrasing, but came into North Dakota State freshman year as a tight end, kind of just
so he can play tight end guy. Too, if you look at it,
yeah, he can play tight end too. Yeah, not anymore. But he definitely he hit the weight room, hit the training tables, and gained a lot of weight to be a better offensive lineman. Grew out his hair long, and in the process, somewhere along the line, lost his 2 front teeth. So if you go back and watch any celebration highlights from North Dakota State advancing to the FCS National Championship, you will see Cody Mauch donning a cowboy hat and playing air guitar. But because of his versatility on the line, a team will definitely take a flyer on him in the first round. They will, if it's a team especially that has multiple first round picks. I could see somebody like the Seattle Seahawks, for instance, looking at him and saying, look, we don't know, you may not be a starter for us, but you're going to be a huge depth piece because you can play all 5 spots on the line and you are really good, who could eventually be a starter as well. So look for Cody Mauch to be a sleeper pick in the first round come Thursday night.
So one last thing we want to get to here before we get out of here is we want to do we're going to do a mock draft, but we're going to do the top 10. We don't want to sit here for for however long and do all top 32 picks, especially because you know what, once Thursday comes up, it won't matter anymore because I'm sure it'll be way different from what we project. I tried to, so back when I was a youngster, I think it was a high school, maybe early college years, I did a football blog for a while, an NFL blog, back when that was a thing. And I did a mock draft, and that's like the first lesson that I learned about doing that. Is I had like all these predictions, and like within like 10 minutes on opening night, I was like, none of this matters because once the first domino falls, like everything changes. So it just kind of it is what it
Yeah.
is. So. We want to do our mock draft. We're going to do the top 10. I don't know if you worked any trades in. I usually try to stay away from it just because it's
Yeah.
too volatile. But we'll be seeing the Panthers, Texans, Cardinals, Colts, Seahawks, Lions, Raiders, Falcons, Bears, Eagles in that order. So let's go ahead and kick it off here. My mock draft looks like this: pick one to the Panthers, round one, selection number one. We talked about it earlier. Pretty much unanimous decision here. They're going to take Alabama quarterback Bryce Young. They traded up. They need a quarterback. Pretty much a lock to go number one, according to all the mock drafts I've seen. So, Bryce Young, you're going to be a Carolina Panther. Have fun. Pick number two to the Houston Texans. Now I've seen a lot of people say that maybe Will Levis could go here. I've seen other people say that the Texans could go defensive lineman because they're not like sold on a lot of the, on a lot of the other players, and they might go defense here. I just don't see a team that's current quarterback is Davis Mills. Now I did see an interesting thing that they could possibly go get Trey Lance from the 49ers. That's a possibility. Now, I can't foresee the 49ers, who have a quarterback room that at one point had 3 viable starters, being like, you know what? We're going to go down to 1 because that's worked out when we've had 1 just viable option. Of course, the Texans have enough draft capital to make that not really a non-issue, especially if they went out. Maybe the 49ers go out and get like Hendon Hooker or somebody. But I digress. Or maybe Stetson Bennett, even Max Duggan, get one of those guys who like in that right system, be like, hey, we made it work with Brock Purdy. Who says we can't make Stetson Bennett, who's like a unanimous person who's been talked about as being a backup. Anyway, like I said, digress. So I just find it hard to believe they don't go quarterback here. I think it's all been smoke and mirrors. I think it's all been to throw off the scent of what they could potentially do, get another team to be like, oh, if the Texans don't want to take a quarterback, then maybe we can trade up with them. Maybe we could do something. I don't know. They're going C.J. Stroud is what I'm ultimately going with here. They go with Ohio State quarterback C.J. Stroud. Like I said, I've seen reports that Houston may not go quarterback here, but like I said, just too hard not to believe they would go signal caller here. Stroud is the far and away second best option in this draft, in my opinion, and I just can't see the Texans passing on him. Pick number 3, the Arizona Cardinals go with Alabama edge rusher Will Anderson Jr. He's a 2-time Nagurski Award winner, best defensive player in the FBS. He's got the second most sacks in Bama history. His player comp is Von Miller, so that's high praise and high shoes to fill there. Cardinals need a defensive lineman, and Anderson is the obvious choice. He's got good quickness and power. He still played in Alabama's bowl game, so you kind of see the leadership there because a lot of players would have skipped the bowl game going into the draft. So Will Anderson Jr., he's going to be an Arizona Cardinal. Not going to spend a whole lot of time at 4 because we talked about it at length last week, but I have the Colts taking Florida quarterback Anthony Richardson. I like I said, won't go through the spiel again, but I think he could be potentially sculpted into something really good by Shane Steichen. Levis is the one everybody says the Colts will go with, but I just like Richardson better. At number 5, the Seahawks. I have them going with Georgia defensive tackle Jalen Carter here. They do need help on the defensive line, and it's tough to think that they would pass on the second best defensive lineman in this draft, especially because there's some people who have Carter and Anderson flip-flopped. So both defensive linemen are in high regard, and two of the 3 players that that NFL.com has them rated as far as like doing really well at the combine. There were only 3 players were rated above 7, and Carter was one of those, and I can't imagine them passing on him. Like I said, talked about his accolades earlier. Pick number 6, you talked about him earlier, B. Scott. I've got Oregon cornerback Christian Gonzalez going to the Lions. The Lions do get help in the secondary. They need it, and they hope to hit on another top 10 defensive prospect. He had 3 interceptions. He was top 3 in interceptions in the Pac-12 last season. Second team all Pac-12. He's got good length and speed at the position. So I think that he's going to have some success there. Pick number 7, the Raiders. I think they kind of have a perfect scenario for them. They were talking quarterback, and they don't even have to trade up to get him. They're gonna go with quarterback out of Kentucky, Will Levis. Um, you know, Quarterback isn't really listed as a top need for the Raiders. They did go out and get Jimmy G, which I mean his injury history is known. But if Levis falls to them, they may opt to go with the Kentucky signal caller. He does have a Josh Allen comp, according to CBS, and he's got good mobility, strength, arm size. He could be the type of prospect that Josh McDaniels would like to try to mold and get his full potential. May work out with having such a good offensive mind in Josh McDaniels. So I think the Raiders go Levis there. Pick number 8 with the Falcons. I have them taking running back Bijan Robinson. Some experts have Robinson going here. He's another strong weapon to add to an already great young core. The Falcons. I mean, you look at some of the young talent they have. They've got Drake London. They've got Kyle Pitts. They add Bijan Robinson in the mix. I mean, that's all you could want if you're Desmond Ritter. And I mean, I don't know. Is who's why can't I think of his name? The guy that got suspended for gambling. Is he going to be back this year or no?
Calvin Ridley.
Yeah, is Calvin Ridley? Is he going to be back this year or no?
I think. Yeah, he's back,
Well, if
but he's not with the Falcons anymore.
okay, he's not with the Falcons anymore. I wasn't sure, but anyway, regardless,
I believe he's now with Jacksonville.
I got you. Because I was going to say, even like with him too, that would be even more of a stacked roster. But still, Drake London, Bijan Robinson, Kyle Pitts, can't go wrong with that core there. Pick 9, the Bears. I have them taking Ohio State tackle Paris Johnson. The Bears' top priority needs to be protecting Justin Fields, and they get a guy who is versatile. He can play guard, he can play tackle. He moved to left tackle in 2022 and earned all Big Ten honors, as well as being named an AP All-American. He's got great footwork, technique, sound athleticism, and timing. And then finally, I kind of want to go like freestyle here and say the Packers trade up 3 spots and get Jackson Smith and Jigba here. But they definitely wouldn't need to do that. Still sticking with the Eagles, but you know what? Maybe they would need to do this here because I have the Eagles taking Ohio State wide receiver Jackson Smith and Jigba with the 10th overall pick. I know Philly is a strong trade candidate, so I kind of like went with their top need or one of their top needs, which is a wide receiver. They may go for Smith and Jigba, who we've talked about earlier in this show as being one of the top wide receiver talents in this draft. He had a great combine. He's got great speed. He's got great ball tracking skills. He did set the single season record at Ohio State for receiving yards in 2021 with over 1,600 yards. So I think Smith and Jigba could be a good candidate to the Eagles. Now, like I said, they're a good trade candidate, so they could probably trade back and still probably snag him. But that's who I have them taking at 10. So again, to recap, I've got Bryce Young to the Panthers. I've got C.J. Stroud to the Texans. Will Anderson to the Cardinals. Anthony Richardson to the Colts. Jalen Carter to the Seahawks. Christian Gonzalez to the Lions. Will Levis to the Raiders. Bijan Robinson to the Falcons. Paris Johnson to the Bears. And Jackson Smith and Jigba to the Eagles.
All right, so obviously we all have agreed upon number 1 overall pick to the Carolina Panthers is going to be Bryce Young. No need to look back on that one. I actually, at number 2, I have the Houston Texans taking Will Levis, quarterback out of Kentucky. I think they're more in love with him than most people are letting on. I honestly, that at the same time, I think DeMarco Ryan, the new head coach down at with Houston,
DeMeco Ryans.
DeMeco Ryans, yeah. He wants to put together a strong defense, so he's also leaning towards Will Anderson as well, which hey, not a bad move either way. But I have them taking Will Levis just because, a quarterback of that caliber isn't going to be around when they're picking again at 12. Arizona, like I said, you and I talked off air. I thought, hey, maybe the Colts and the Cardinals could flip. There's a chance for them to flip flop picks, and it wouldn't really take a whole lot. But didn't do trades in this one, just keeping everything standing as it is. I have the Arizona Cardinals taking Will Anderson out of Alabama. They desperately need help with the pass rush, and Will Anderson can help them immensely. At 4 with the Indianapolis Colts, I do have them taking CJ Stroud. I think if CJ Stroud drops to here, the Colts, even if Will Levis is still on the board, I think the Colts are going to be crazy to not take CJ Stroud. Because it has like up until just recently, everybody's been in agreement that CJ Stroud and Bryce Young are the top two quarterbacks in this draft. And after that, there is a drop off. Um, I just think with what Shane Steichen looks to do with his quarterbacks, CJ Stroud would fit really well into his offense. But the Colts, regardless of who the Colts take as a quarterback, if it's come Thursday night and it's not CJ Stroud and it's Will Levis or Anthony Richardson, they have to improve their offensive line play and their wide receiving room. Number 5, the Seattle Seahawks. I have them actually taking Tyree Wilson out of Texas Tech, an edge rusher. Look, Jalen Carter, the off the field question marks are going to hurt him. And I think in the end, the Seahawks just need help up front, no matter where. And Tyree Wilson is the next best player as far as defensive linemen go, even though he is a defensive end. Number 6, the Detroit Lions. I have them taking cornerback Devin Witherspoon out of Illinois. They traded Jeffrey Okudah to Atlanta, and so they are needing to fill his spot in the secondary. Devin Witherspoon, he's a fierce competitor, and Dan Campbell, the head coach in Detroit, is just going to love this kid's attitude, his passion for the game. Number 7, the Las Vegas Raiders. With the top 3 quarterbacks off the board, I actually have them going with corner Christian Gonzalez out of Oregon. One of their biggest issues last year, one of the Raiders' biggest issues last year, is they just couldn't stop anybody, and it was proof when the Colts went into Las Vegas, and with Jeff Saturday's first game as head coach,
and Matt Ryan broke 40 on him.
Yeah, and Matt Ryan looked like a serviceable quarterback, and everybody was believing. I mean, hey, maybe that's what was needed, was the coaching change, and everything's going to get turned around. Well, it just turns out the Raiders could not. They couldn't stop anything. They couldn't stop I'm not no analogies needed. They had a very tough time stopping the passing game. Number 8, the Atlanta Falcons. I have them taking Bijan Robinson, running back out of Texas. He would be a really good complement to Kyle Pitts, who's their tight end, and Drake London, one of their wide receivers. With Desmond Ridder at quarterback. The Falcons just need somebody else to kind of take some pressure off the offense, and Bijan Robinson is definitely going to do that. And look, anytime the Falcons have been good, they've had a really strong running game, and bringing in Bijan Robinson can help them get back to that point of having a strong running game. Number 9, with the Chicago Bears, I actually have them taking Jalen Carter. He does fall. He doesn't fall too far, though. So I think the Bears get lucky here. Having the number 1 overall pick, there was a lot of talk of, hey, will they take Will Anderson or will they take Jalen Carter? Either one of those guys has the talent to be the number 1 overall pick. So the Bears, by trading back, still able to land a player like Jalen Carter. That's going to help their defense immensely. And then at 10, with the Philadelphia Eagles, I do have them taking Jackson Smith and Jigba as well. That's the last thing they need. But hey, when you have made the right trades and you have gotten yourself in position to be a top 10 pick after making it to the Super Bowl, you have the luxury of taking players that are just going to make your team that much better and that much scarier. So go ahead and add Jackson Smith and Jigba to that already stacked wide receiver room with Jalen Hurts at quarterback. That's going to be fun to watch.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, look, that team is going to be just absolutely incredible next year. Can't wait to see what they're able to do, especially if they go out and get Jackson Smith and Jigba. That'll be a lot of fun. And that will do it for this week's edition of the Crash Course Podcast. Thank you guys all for hanging out. Remember, you can like us on Facebook, 3C Media. Go follow us on Twitter at 3C Media Sports. Check out the YouTube channel, 3C Media over there. You guys killed it. Thank you for the support. As far as the the couple of videos we put out about the Colts draft, you guys hit us up with the likes, the follows, the views. We appreciate that. So thank you for showing all your support there, as well as over on TikTok, 3C Media on there as well. We're over 2.5K followers. Love to hit 3K. That'd be a lot of fun to do. So if you haven't already, go over there and hit that follow button there, at least before we get TikTok banned. Then obviously don't go follow over there, but as long as it's still up, we're going to be posting there, so make sure you go over and check it out. Remember, you can listen every week on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Spotify. Wherever podcasts can be heard, you can hear the Crash Course Podcast. You can find me at Crash Course FM on Twitter. B. Scott, where can they find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Brandon_Scott87, and no, I do not have a blue check mark.
No, we 3C Media used to, and we got rid of Twitter Blue went away, and so I haven't got it back. But nonetheless, yeah, go follow us over there. Go follow everybody over on Twitter. Me, B. Scott, the 3C Media. Go hit us up with those follows. Next week we'll have yet again another draft episode, but we'll be recapping what the Colts did, what everybody else did in the draft. We'll be kind of summing everything up, tying everything into a bow before the following week we start getting into Indy 500 coverage. The month of May is coming up, so one more draft episode, and then we'll be hitting up some other content as well with the Indy 500 coming down the pike as well. So it's going to be a lot of fun to do that. Everybody enjoy the draft, but until then, have a good week, everybody.